For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Welcome to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. I'm Eric Grandstrom, your host, and on this series of Let's Learn, we're talking about something nobody wants to talk about: death and dying. And in that subject matter, there's a whole lot to cover. We're going to talk to some folks with the cemeteries. We're going to talk to funeral homes. We're going to talk to folks from the hospital and from different care facilities. On this particular episode, we're pleased to be joined by two from the hospice industry. We're going to find out exactly what that all is. From Confluence Hospital, joining us here, we have Michelle Church, who is a registered nurse. She is the hospice clinical supervisor for Confluence Health. And we have Dr. Steve Voorhies, who's the hospice medical director. Thank you very much for joining us here on Let's Learn.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So let's start first of all. Okay, that's a lot of verbiage. What exactly do you do?
Oh gosh. I supervise the clinical staff, so all of the hospice nurses, the social workers, and the bath aides that go out to the home and see the hospice patients. I help the nurses determine if a patient meets hospice criteria for eligibility. I do a lot of phone calls. A lot of our patients call into the office and have questions. The patients call in, our families call in and have questions, so I do a lot of triage and kind of crisis management over the phone.
Okay.
I do all the education in the hospital or in hospice for the staff about hospice and what we do, and try to keep people up to date on all the new regulations and things that are coming out.
Which
so
I'm sure is
it's every day. Yeah. Medicare, Medicare.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Voorhies, what's your role with hospice through Confluence?
I think one of the unique things for a physician is that this is genuinely a team approach to patient care. So I work closely with Michelle. There's two other medical directors that we all three of us share those administrative responsibilities that Medicare requires. We are responsible ultimately for determining if a patient qualifies clinically for hospice. We do some of the education. Michelle does a lot of it, more of it, but we do some things like Journal Club, where we review articles. We review certain aspects of care that just need to be reviewed and maybe refine some of our approaches.
Okay, let's back up a little bit and talk about what hospice is. I mean, generally speaking, I think we've heard about it a little bit, but we might not know exactly what hospice is.
Yeah, hospice is a program that almost everyone has an ability to become part of, depending on your insurance. But if you have Medicare, 100%, you have hospice Medicare benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Hospice is nursing, social workers, bath aides, chaplain, volunteers, comfort therapy. We provide a little bit of everything to support the patient and the family during their last days of life.
So I've been given a diagnosis of a fatal disease of some sort, or whatever my medical condition is. I've got a window that's closing, correct? Mm-hmm. So then it's, okay, what are my options, I guess? It's and there's a whole discussion here that, palliative care, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I don't know if that's just for a diagnosis that I'm not going to make it, or exactly what that is. And is hospice part of palliative care? Or you talk about that team approach, I imagine that's what that's about.
It's a little bit separate. I mean, in the sense that palliative care really helps patients with chronic disease who may or may not be in the process of dying. Mm-hmm. Hospice, by definition, involves a patient who has been determined to have 6 months or less to live. Okay. So that's sort of, and then hospice focuses on comfort. And that's the main, holistically I would say, both in terms of pain that can be physical pain, but there's also social type pain, there's emotional, spiritual pain. Mm-hmm. So it's a holistic approach to caring for somebody who is in the process of basically dying.
Is the idea behind hospice a matter of caring for that person in their home or in a situation away from clinical care, per se?
Yeah, most people, I mean, if you look at the statistics, most people want to die in their own home. I don't know the exact statistics, but it's somewhere in the 80%.
Yeah, according to Stanford School of Medicine, it
Yeah,
says 80%
yeah.
of people would like to die
Yeah.
in home.
And unfortunately, only about 27 to 30% actually meet that goal. So our goal is to help people meet people where they are. We're not here to tell them what to do or how to do their journey. We're just here to walk with them, and if their goal is to die in their own home, then we help them meet that goal. We have some patients who don't want to die in their home. Maybe they're fairly young and they have young children and they don't want their children exposed to that, so we work with them to keep them in their home as long as we can, and in the last few stages of their life, we'll move them into what we call respite care, so that they can pass in a different environment away from their home.
Yeah, I imagine that everybody has kind of their predisposition on hospitals, and I don't want to be in a hospital, and most people are kind of like that. Nothing against the hospital, because that's
Right.
where they get you well and get you back home, hopefully. But it seems that it's about not just, well, I guess it's really about a choice, isn't it? And that person, there could be no more something personal than that choice of where they spend their final moments on this earth.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So we're going to take a break here pretty quick, but I wanted to touch a little bit about, you said 6 months. So, I mean, that's rolling the dice, isn't it? I mean, and that's got to be a really tough one, because it's like, okay, you have X amount to live.
Right.
Well, I mean, we're all guessing in that regard.
Yeah.
There are some criteria. There are some illnesses that are easier to make a prognosis of 6 months than others. The difficult ones can tend to be like dementia, heart failure, and those two in particular, and some lung diseases. But there are clinical criteria that we follow. There's also what we call the surprise question, and that question is, would you be surprised if this person died in 6 months? Granted, it's a subjective question and answer, but it's also an informed answer. So if you look at the nurses who are experienced with hospice, you look at primary care physicians, oncologists, cardiologists, they've had experience with sort of this intuitive learning about that. So there's clinical criteria and then the surprise question.
So we're going to continue with this discussion about hospice care and about trying to plan ahead if you do, or if someone in your life, your loved one, gets that prognosis that it's not going to be good, and eventually the window is closing, as we say. We want to talk about exactly how that works through the hospital. Also the training that goes into that, because I imagine that's probably been an evolution in this process as well, as far as hospice is concerned. So we'll take a break and we'll come back, and we appreciate you watching here on Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Kerry Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. I'm your host, Eric Granstrom, and we continue our series on death and dying, talking about hospice care. And joining us here in studio, we have from Confluence Health, a registered nurse with the hospice program, Michelle Church, and we also have Dr. Steve Voorhies, who is kind of in charge of determining or helping to determine who gets hospice care. So let's again go back a little bit here. The diagnoses. Let's just pick cancer, because that seems to be, I imagine, the one that gets us most. So I get a diagnosis of cancer. I've been fighting it. The family's been fighting it, and it keeps coming back. And now I get that determination from the doc that says, you know what, we're not winning this battle. What happens then?
So a number of different things could happen, but if in fact you as the patient would have an opportunity to elect to choose hospice, if for some reason you couldn't make the choice because you were that ill, then your family or caregiver could make that determination. Hopefully you've been talking to your primary care physician or the oncologist in this case And they've been pretty straightforward about how you're doing, and so that you shouldn't be surprised that this is coming up.
And that goes back to the palliative care, correct, as far as advanced directives and things like that. So hopefully early on, and this is part of the discussion why I want to have this this conversation about death and dying, is because nobody wants to talk about it, but it's going to face us all one way or another. And if you at least have the conversation and let your loved ones know what you want, because as we said, there's no personal choice, I mean, really, than that, at least the conversation's there. So when we get to this discussion about hospice care and the final stages of your life, at least your family members know if you can't say that yourself.
Right. And this might be a good point just to mention a book. There's a book by a surgeon at Harvard named Atul Gawande, Being Mortal. It's a superb book on addressing the very thing that you're trying to do with this program. Very readable. It's not a technical book. And it's really one of the books that I really recommend strongly, so it might be something that your viewers would be interested in.
Okay. Again, the title is Being Mortal?
Being Mortal.
Okay. All right. We'll
It's
get
a phenomenal book.
the link on that for you, too. And that's so difficult because it's so emotional. It's something that, especially when you're dealing with it, maybe in a crisis situation where you don't have time to plan. It's such an emotional thing, and you have different family members that get involved that obviously have their desires, but that might not necessarily be the desire of the person that's dealing with whatever the case is, with the injury or the illness in this case. So let's go back to the diagnosis. All right, so now I've got X amount of months, under 6 months to go. I've worked with my Dr. Long at Confluence Health, and he says, well, Eric, this is what's coming. So what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Have I already been with the diagnosis of cancer before that? Have I already been contacted by you and
No.
or how does that work?
No. Usually it's a discussion between the patient and the physician they're pretty good about recognizing that a patient is ready for hospice, and they'll bring up the discussion, and if the patient says yes, by all means, I'm ready for hospice, then the physician will give us a referral. We'll get an actual physical piece of paper that says I'm referring this patient to hospice. We take the information, and then we call the family, we call the patient, and just connect up with them. Make sure that they knew the referral was coming. Make sure that they're really truly ready for that. And then we set up an appointment to come out, and we do what we call our enrollment visit, where we actually go through what hospice is, what we can provide for them, and then have them sign all the paperwork, and we gather data, and then we're off and running.
The change that has to happen usually in the home could be quite substantial as far as having that person be there, depending on their physical state or lack thereof. As far as a hospital bed, as far as getting back and forth to the bathroom, as far as showers and bathing and things like that. I imagine that's quite involved. But also, doesn't that take time?
Absolutely. The best part, one of the best parts about hospice is that we've done this a lot. We know how to do it really well. We've walked this path hundreds of times. We know what people need. We're able to get all the equipment, all the support out to the home that the patient needs. And it's always evolving. It's always changing. Every day is a different day because it's, as we go through this process, it's just an ongoing change every day. So, yeah, we're really good at it.
You mentioned that evolution that's happened. I want to ask you, Steve, about this. As far as you mentioned holistic, and I think that's a term that might have evolved itself here over the last 10, 20 years as far as final care for someone. Because I think in the old days, wasn't it, you're in the hospital, you're going to die, that's it. I mean, you didn't have a choice. You're sick, you're going here, and that's where you're going to be.
But interestingly, from the very beginning, hospice, when it started in actually 1906 in London by a physician named Cicely Saunders, and she actually recognized that people who are dying don't just have physical pain, but as I mentioned before, emotional, spiritual, and social pain. And so from the very beginning, hospice has been holistic, and that's, in some ways, hospice has taught medicine as a whole that we need to be doing that. One other thing that, as Michelle was just talking, that's essential is early enrollment, not late enrollment. Nationally, about half the patients who are admitted to hospice are admitted in the last 2 weeks of life. As you heard Michelle talk about all the things they have to get into place, plus getting to know people, early recognition that hospice could be helpful is really essential. Our numbers are about the same as the national numbers, so probably 30% of our patients who are admitted to hospice here are only there for 1 week before they pass away. And so we really wanted to emphasize the importance of coming to grips with an earlier referral, which is not easy, as you've already pointed out the reasons.
Right.
I think I can't reiterate that enough, and I think what people hear when they hear hospice is, oh gosh, I'm dying, I'm going to die. And yeah, that's true, you know, we're all dying. But what I wish people would hear more often is, oh great, I've got some support, I've got some help to help me walk this path. And it's very difficult to establish a relationship, and this is a very intimate, private time in people's lives, the last 7 days of their life. I mean, how can you establish a relationship and provide the best care that you can with 7 days?
Well, and also the trust factor, too.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. So our goal is to try to get people to rethink about hospice, less about, gosh, I'm actively dying, and more about what can this group, what can this program help me to live my last few weeks or months of life more fully. We never give up hope. We just change what we hope for.
And one of the classic things that Saunders pointed out over 100 years ago is that personal growth is still possible in the last 6 months of your life, both for yourself, for the caregivers, and for the healthcare professionals.
Right.
Well, I think if you see the handwriting on the wall, because how many of us actually know when the end will come? Well, now you have a diagnosis that the end's coming either 4 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. So if there's things lingering in your life that you didn't take care of,
Exactly.
now's your opportunity. We're going to take a quick break and come back. One more episode to go here on Let's Learn on the NCW Life channel. We'll be right back.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
Welcome back to Let's Learn here on the NCW Life channel. I'm your host, Eric Granstrom, and in our discussion of death and dying, we're talking about hospice care today. We have Dr. Steve Voorhies and registered nurse Michelle Church joining us here on the NCW Life channel. I know of some folks who've had hospice care for a gentleman's mother, and I wanted to touch on this because it's crucial. They were as active in the hospice care for the mother as the medical folks.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to talk about training and helping people so that, you know, we talked about trust before we went to the break and having a stranger come into the household. If it's possible, if there's family members that can help out, that's huge, I would imagine, for hospice care.
Well, and I think there's a little misunderstanding too about what hospice is. Hospice does not come into your home and provide 24/7 care.
Right.
We come in and we train the family members, the loved ones, to care for this person who's dying. And however many times we need to come in to get them trained, we do. We can come out every day, we can come out once a week. It just depends on the situation and where the patient and the family is. But yeah, the training can be really extensive, and the sooner we can get a patient on service, the better. If we're getting someone on service who is totally bedbound, maybe not swallowing or eating or drinking anymore, the care of that patient is so much heavier than someone who's up and walking around and eating and drinking and more independent. And then it's more of a transition and the family's more ready for it.
Right. And I think through the evolution and the process of you guys doing this over and over and over and getting more accustomed to signs, for example. Okay, here's family, this is what you can expect here over the next period of time.
Yes, we actually have a whole book that we give the families what to expect at end of life, and it's we all pretty much go the same way. We can pretty much predict certain symptoms and signs are going to show up. So the book is really good, and it gives people some indication of what to look for and what to expect, so there's no surprises. And then the nurses are so good. They come out and they're really, really good at talking to the families and giving them pointers and
Right.
yeah.
And I hear that so much about hospice, and I've talked to several people in the Valley who've had hospice care for a loved one, and that theme resonates over and over. Those nurses, those people are so amazing that come into the house, and it's just, they walk in and it's a fresh breath of air that happens when they come in.
We, the two other medical directors and I kid that, we've been physicians all our lives, but we're actually being mentored by Michelle and these nurses. And there's also social service workers, chaplains, so it's a multidisciplinary approach, which is terrific.
And it's not just a matter of taking care of the person who's passing away. It's about taking care of all of them around them with hospice care. And that education that goes on too. I mean, even help administer medication. I know that happens as well.
Yeah. Well, and again, like Steve said, we try to look at more than just physical symptoms. We look at spiritual symptoms. We provide comfort therapy, so we have a harpist, we have music therapy, we have a lady who comes in and cuts people's hair for them. So we have a whole range of different, and massage therapist, of support for the family and the patient beyond just medications and equipment. And
so it may not be your choice that you're passing away, but it can definitely be your choice in certain circumstances how you pass away. And I think that's important to get out there. Now we're going to walk to the hospital and find a sign that says hospice care, or how do we even delve into this conversation?
That's a really good question. Part of the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting too. I didn't know what the reaction was going to be when I went to the hospital and talked to them about, okay, well, I want to talk about dying, because that's what the hospital's trying to prevent, is that from happening. But, the statistics say that most of us are going to end up there one way or another. And the feedback when I talked to your office and everything was, we're waiting for this vehicle to have a conversation like this. Thank you so much. And so, but that's a question though. We had the chaplain in here earlier about helping families deal with the situation in the hospital. How do people get information about hospice? I guess it starts with a doctor.
I think it's really, it's both a cultural issue and a medical issue. And so part of what we want to be able to do is to help educate our own physicians in Confluence Health and otherwise other physicians in the community and area. But then the whole cultural issue, because I think most patients see medicine as being basically the ability to preserve my life forever.
Right.
And so there's that conversation needs to go on.
But there's a lot of information about hospice on the internet. So I think if anyone just Googled hospice, you would find multitudes of information about hospice. You can always call our office. I'm more than happy to talk, and I talk to people every single day about hospice. I have families who call me in a panic saying, I need help, and I help get the physician order, I help get the program going for them. So yeah, there's just a lot of options open to people, and if you ever...
Hard not to be emotional about these kinds of topics, but that's the reason why I want to have this discussion here on Let's Learn, and why I want to give you folks the opportunity to come in a non-charged, non-emotional environment to have a discussion about, okay, well, here's your options. And let's not wait for the last 2 weeks of somebody's life.
Exactly.
Let's try to get it to a lot sooner than that, so that, how did you phrase that again?
We never give up hope, we just change what we hope for.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Michelle, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Steve, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, there's part of our discussion on death and dying here on the NCW Life channel. You can call the hospital for more information. We'll put that number on the screen if you'd like to find out more about hospice care through Confluence Health. Thanks for watching.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.